The Bank of Canada has cut interest rates by 50 basis points, but this is not changing the psychology of investors who are now beginning to pull out of the housing market en masse because of the losses that they're having to deal with here. So the mainstream media, this is even reporting on it now. So you've got Bloomberg coming out with this in the red pretty deep. Canadian housing investors trying to sell for staunch losses. So it basically says that this guy is ready to end his foray into real estate investing. The 20-year-old car mechanic became a landlord 2 years ago. I mean, doesn't this kind of all sound like the sort of scenario that you would hear in movies like The Big Short, you know, where everybody essentially is getting a mortgage? You know, this guy, his full-time job is a mechanic, and basically he's going into real estate investing in his part-time. And, you know, when everybody is doing that, when you've got people who don't normally invest in things like real estate and they're going into it on the side, that's pretty much when you know that you're near the top in a bubble. The same goes for the stock market. You know, when people are looking at stocks and you hear everybody's buying a certain stock, that's generally a good sign to actually sell that. So the 20-year-old car mechanic became a landlord 2 years ago, paying $600,000 for a two-bedroom condo in the small but fast-growing city of Barrie. Again, how speculative is it buying in a place like Barrie? You know, this isn't even the GTA. This isn't even your blockbuster housing bubbles, Toronto, Vancouver. This is outside of the GTA in the commuter towns. This is even more speculative, essentially, and a lot of these people have been burnt now, including this person. And we're going to get into some bigger losses as well as this goes on, so stick around. So really interesting, about an hour north of where he lives in Toronto. It's been costing him about $1,600 every month because his mortgage payments spiked with higher interest rates, outpacing what he can charge in rent. So basically $1,600 cash flow negative. I mean, what an investment is that? I was in the red pretty deep, but I was trying to focus on hold on to this place and maybe keep it a couple of years so I can make some money and flip it. Now, this is just the narrative in Canada in a nutshell. For 95% of real estate investors are thinking the exact same thing. You know, I'm never going to get anything wrong here. You know, housing prices only go up. This is exactly what you hear in a housing bubble. And alarm bells should be ringing in people's heads when they hear stuff like this, but they just don't. They think actually that's a good sign. So anyway, really interesting. But though rates are finally falling, he's had enough of bleeding cash every month. He plans to list the property this month for about $80,000 less than he paid. And of course, it also begs the question, is he going to be able to sell it for even that price? He might end up selling it for a lot less than that because places like Barrie have been absolutely smashed up in the housing market crash that is only just really getting started, and people think it is in fact ending because the Bank of Canada is coming in to save the day and keep the soft landing that we're all just gonna get. We're all just gonna be feeling warm and fuzzy because we're gonna get this soft landing, even though we know the economy is deteriorating at a rapid rate. I'm gonna take my losses now and get out with whatever I can, he said. He may not be alone. New listings have jumped across Canada's major housing markets as sellers come back in. While it's unclear exactly how many listings are coming from investors, experts say the outlook for landlords has worsened as some struggle to generate enough rent to cover costs. And just bear in mind, in a recession, the landlord is being hit double time because essentially you're going to have more and more people that are also defaulting on rent payments. So you're going to have more people that are defaulting on rent payments. Unemployment obviously is already heading up. We know that unemployment is a big problem in the Canadian economy. That's only going to get worse right now. So the outlook for landlords, it's not getting better, it's getting much worse. Even with the declines that you're seeing in interest rates, things are not getting better. When you look at the economy, things are getting a lot worse. I would not want to be a landlord in in this environment, it is just a very bad time to be a landlord. They basically throw up this chart here, which is what's happening with rent and the fact that they've just kind of stagnated here. And obviously in real terms, they've actually dropped. And you're seeing this in most major markets. I mean, even the markets where, you know, investors and speculators move to, Calgary, Edmonton, rents have not passed their last year's peak in the summer, and they have flatlined, and they're actually down about 5% in both places year over year. So very interesting, the dynamic that's going on. And then of course you had the Bank of Canada that came out, cut interest rates by 0.5 point, which happened last week. We covered that on the channel. If you did not see that video, then go check it out. We took a biggest step today because inflation is now back to the 2% target, and we want to keep it close to that target. They want to keep destroying your purchasing power no matter what. Even when inflation, if it went down to 0%, they would then be worried, oh my God, we need to get inflation back up. We need to keep destroying everybody's purchasing power. So very interesting. And then another thing that came out in their press releases, which happened last week, the Bank of Canada said, all this suggests we are now back to low inflation. McClem said in his prepared opening remarks, now our focus is to maintain low, stable inflation. We need to stick the landing. The bank now sees upward and downward risks to its inflation projection as reasonably balanced, he added. So they need to stick the landing. The landing, they've already crashed it. They've already crashed the plane. It's just they haven't realized it yet. It's only people on this channel who've realized it. The mainstream media hasn't realized it either. It's just, it's like we live in just a completely different reality on this channel to what the average people are thinking. You know, nobody can see clearly what is going on. I mean, it does not take a rocket scientist to work it out. And then Shazzy once again has just been on the rampage on Twitter posting losses. This is a $635,000 loss. So in 2022, in April, this was sold for $2.15 million, and it just sold for $1.515 million. That is a 30% loss, essentially. Just think about that for a second. 30%. And the inflation that's happened over the past couple of years. And get this, we're not even anywhere near close to the bottom, because that is not affordability at $1.5 million for an old bungalow in Kitchener. You're not even talking about Toronto or Vancouver. You're talking about Kitchener. I mean, this is just how insane things have got in Canada. So another lawsuit that's happened, $500,000 lawsuit after a buyer walked away. They bought at the very top of the market, 2022, and agreed to pay $300,000 over the asking price at $1.3 million. And it's just crazy. Even Shazzy points it out, $1.3 million for a Durham semi-detached house. Things went south for the deal afterward. The buyer relisted and sold for almost $300,000 lower than the agreed price a few months later. Sellers have sued for a massive $500,000. And this doesn't generally work out in the buyer's favor, but at the end of the day, they've actually got to try and get that money from the buyers, because they can't just create that money out of thin air. And most of these people are going to end up claiming bankruptcy. They're going to end up declaring bankruptcy because they ain't going to be able to afford that amount of money. It's just pure clown world if people think that they're going to get paid that kind of amounts of money. So Toronto tribulations, someone bought a one-bedroom condo in Toronto for $1.43 million. Have a guess what they just sold for? $1.1 million. That is around a 23% loss. So yet another loss, and a one-bedroom condo, guys, for $1.43 million. I mean, what on earth were these people smoking? It is just unbelievable what people would pay just a few years ago. This was just happening a few years ago. And what people fail to remember is this was seemingly normal. Like, people thought this was normal. It was only people like me who was saying, Alarm bells are ringing here. Something is not obviously right. This is not a normal market. This is a financialized market. It's a housing bubble. And clearly it was a mania when you have these type of transactions that are going through, and you have all these deep regrets that are also happening. A lot of people are being completely screwed, both sellers and buyers. A lot of lawsuits flying around, and we're soon going to see the lawsuits flying around from the banks as well. So just stay tuned for that. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And if you're looking for a VPN and want to help support the channel, then go to the affiliate link expressvpn.com/marketmania. That's the VPN that I use. I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.